Hello, everybody, and welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet, and today we're going to be taking a look at a poem by Randy Brooks from the latest issue of Chrysanthemum with the first line of "No right or wrong." With that said, you know what time it is. Time to sit back, relax, grab yourself a tasty beverage, and let's haiku. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Haiku Talk. This is a channel where I take a poem from a recently published journal and break it down and show you kind of how it works and why it resonates. And we got a nice one here from the latest issue of Chrysanthemum. This one comes to us from Randy Brooks, a veteran in the haiku field, both as a wonderful poet as well as a fine publisher, and who's in charge of Brooks Books. Happens to publish my current latest book, One Note Moon. Plug. But this poem is really nice, and it rides a fine line, I think, of normally we talk about poems that things to kind of avoid, or I would say I have talked about this, maybe not so much on the channel, but in other venues, of things to kind of avoid. You don't want to have really do a lot of personification in your haiku of natural things. You want to have, like if you have a bird in a haiku, you want the bird to be the bird. You know, if it's a goldfinch, the goldfinch should only do what a goldfinch does as a goldfinch. We don't want to layer things on top of that, personify it, give it human traits or human qualities. That kind of thing is great for other forms of poetry, but in a haiku, goldfinch needs to be a goldfinch, partly for the respect of the goldfinch. It doesn't need to be anything more than what it is, and that's wonderful enough. And if you're paying attention to what happens in the natural world and what it does, there's plenty of wonder to be had there by itself without adding on layers of things. So, avoiding personification is a good thing. Also, you don't want to prescribe a worldview. These poems aren't preachy. They aren't idealistic or ideologue. We'll go back to preachy. They aren't preachy. They aren't prescribing things, a way for the world to see a specific point of view. They should be left open to allow you to step into a moment and allow your worldview to be reflected there. So they're not preachy, they're not personified, and you want to stay away from slogans and preachy things and things that look good on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker. You want the poem, you want to capture a moment, present it as it is, and use all your tools and skills in craftsmanship to make that moment pop and resonate and work and vibrate and be interesting. But the thing itself should be pretty much as much to what it, just be what it is. As Freud would say, a cigar is just a cigar in this case. That's not to say that the things that you present can't reverberate and have meanings outside of what's there, but at the base core moment there, the thing should be what it is. And if people draw other parallels to other things outside of what's truly there, that's how they enter the poem and how they connect to it, and it takes them someplace. And that's all valid and good. This piece by Randy Brooks does all of those things that you'd want it to do. And it comes kind of close to being kind of a prescription or a sentiment. But it rides that line, but hangs in there, keeping it as a moment. And it's a moment that really reverberates with me, because of how I guess it connects into my wider worldview, but also the way that it helps underscore that the thing in a haiku is a thing. So it is the thing itself. A goldfinch is a goldfinch, and in that way, it's kind of a little Ars Poetica because it's help underscoring what a haiku is in this moment. So let's take a look at the poem, shall we? The poem goes like this. No right or wrong to the floodwater downhill. No right or wrong to the floodwater downhill. Now that first line, well, let me back up a little bit. Let's first take a look about how it works, and then I'll talk more about the poem. So the poem does follow, I would say, the fragment and phrase format, with the phrase being up front and the fragment being the third line. So the phrase is, no right or wrong to the floodwater. And the fragment is downhill. And the reason why I say that is because there's the no right or wrong to the floodwater is, if you stripped the poem by itself, it lives as its own entity. It's something that's addressing the floodwater. And this is where it kind of gets not slogany, not preachy, but a little bit prescription-y. It's telling you, hey, there's no right or wrong to the floodwater. I'm telling you this. And then the fragment of downhill is our location. And again, that can be separated by itself without being attached to anything else. But when you put those two things together, no right or wrong to the floodwater downhill, you get the moment. You get that the floodwater that's being discussed is rushing downhill. It is a moment that's being captured. It is the floodwater charging down the hill. And the sentiment here is that there's no right or wrong to this natural event that's occurring. And so it's not, it's a kind of a reminder to not put blame on a natural event. It's a reminder that the thing that you're experiencing is what it is, and it's going to happen whether you're there or whether you're not there. The goldfinch does what it does, whether a human is there to observe it or not. And that the goldfinch doing what it does is neither good nor bad, it is. And this poem is a reminder that, in this case, using floodwater rushing down a hill, that floodwater might be exciting, it might be scary, it might cause devastation, it might cause destruction. We might want to assign it to climate change. We might want to assign it to poor land management. We might want to make all of these other things to attach to it, to try to find blame or find reason to trying to figure things out. But ultimately, in its base value, heavy rains or snowmelt has caused the floodwater to occur. It's rushing downhill to whatever it's going to meet. And that act alone is neither right or wrong. It's not a human decision. There's nothing human to prescribe to it. It simply is. And in that sense, it reminds us of what a haiku is. It's a moment that exists, that's presented to you, that gives you the thing itself. It's a moment, it's unfolding in the present tense, it's something that's happening. And ultimately, the thing itself is neither good nor bad. It might strike wonder, it might strike woe, depending on what the moment is, but that's for the reader to decide. That's not the moment itself, that's the human prescribing something, a scale to it. And so in this case, Randy reminds us that no right or wrong to the floodwater downhill. That's a natural phenomenon that we're witnessing and experiencing. Everything else around that, how it impacts us as humans, that's on us. That's not on nature. And for that reason, I think this is a fantastic piece and a good reminder not only of what a haiku is, a little ars poetica, and ars poetica means it's a poem about poetry, and a good way to kind of have this sort of message type of poem still function very, very well in the realm of how haiku work. It is a moment. It's captured in the present tense that takes you in and ignites your imagination, and it causes you to fill in the extra details with elements from your own life. I live in a very, I'm in the St. Louis is a confluence point in the United States. We live right along the Mississippi River. Just to the north of the city, we have the confluence of the Missouri River entering into the Mississippi, and a little bit away from that, we have the mighty Illinois River entering into the Mississippi. And so we have these two confluences of big rivers that hit even the bigger river, and so we are flood aware in this part of the world. And in my lifetime, I have been experienced to 100-year floods, to 500-year floods, to that flood of once in a lifetime, once in a century floods, or longer time scale than that floods of the Great Flood of '93, which was something we haven't seen here in hundreds of years. But we've seen a lot of those, and the flood is the flood. The water is the water. It rises as it's rising. It's neither, the fact that the river's doing what it's doing is neither good or bad. It's the function of the natural flow of what happens when there's a lot of water. It goes through the tributaries, feeds into the bigger rivers, feeds into the bigger rivers, and things along the way are going to get wet. And so that might be another reason why this particular piece strikes a chord with me in my river town. But let's take a look at this line by line to kind of see how it works as we do and move forward from there. So that first line of nor right or wrong, nor right or wrong, is a line that's an interesting one because it hits me at an intellectual level. It doesn't necessarily strike me with an image, doesn't put me into any place in nature. It hits my brain, no right or wrong. And that's not something that we see very often in haiku, and it's very hard to kind of pull it off. Like I said, it's successful here in my book, and as well as the editors of Chrysanthemum felt. So it gets my brain working, and which is an interesting first line in that regard, because it's not something I'm used to being attached to so much. So, no right, no wrong. Okay, interesting, making a point. So then we go to line 2, to the floodwater. To the floodwater. Now we know this idea, this concept, no right, no wrong, is addressing floodwater. Okay, so now I've got, again, furthering on my intellectual curiosity, but now we've got a natural element here, and the introduction of floodwater piques my senses to know what floodwater looks like, what causes floodwater to occur, where floodwater might go, different kinds of floods that I've been through, experienced, watched, either in person or on TV or in movies or documentaries. So I'm starting to be engaged beyond just the intellectual line of line 1 into the actual physical world, still carrying in the intellectual question or intellectual comment of line 1. No right or wrong to the floodwater. Okay. Now we get to line 3, the nice 2-word line 3, downhill. Downhill. Suddenly, I'm not only thinking about floods, I'm not only remembering my experience of floods and what that's like to see water rise or stand on an embankment and watch the floodwater go, and I'm thinking about the right or wrong or just the natural occurrence of this. But suddenly now downhill, I'm put at a place where I'm experiencing the floodwater moving. And I'm either experiencing it as being out there watching this happen, or I'm sitting in my living room and watching this happen on TV because it's a big event. And I remember back to the flood of '93, where you'd seen the videos of homes being washed away and floating down the river. and all watching the floodwaters rise and the things that it's doing, because it's at a scale that's too big for any one person to go out and actually see. I do remember also, President Clinton at the time came and flew over the area in Air Force One and looked down, and it looked like this area became another huge lake rather than where three rivers converge. It was just so saturated with water, which did cause a lot of destruction. And you'd want to talk about it in a bad, negative light. But at the end of the base of the matter is the river was doing what rivers do. It was handling the water rush the way that rivers are meant to do that. It's neither good nor bad. It's the way things work. It is the thing that's happening. And that's what this poem, this moment, that's why it resonates with me and why I think it works. Because it puts you right there in the rush of the moment. But it reminds you that this is a natural thing. This is something that happens. And regardless of how intellectually you want to try to engage with it, or what myth or narrative you want to try to prescribe to it, it is a natural phenomenon that is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's floodwater. It's doing what floodwater does. In very much the same way of, here when people, are swimming in the ocean and they get bitten by a shark. Oh, it's tragic and it's horrible. And you think, gosh, I would never want to have that happen to me, and how painful that must be and how scary that might be. But the idea of blaming the shark or calling a shark evil is silly, because the shark was doing what a shark does in its own environment. It is not right nor wrong. It is a shark being a shark. And in this case, floodwater is being floodwater. Moves along, finds the lowest point, moves downhill, neither good nor bad at its root. And so with that, we'll close out the episode. So thank you very much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. It's great to spend some time with you. The YouTube checklist comes next. If you like this episode, please think about giving it a thumbs up. It does help the channel and the algorithms. If you liked this, think about subscribing. It will make sure that I show up in your feed of recommended things to watch or new from your subscription, so you'll not miss an episode. And you can also think about ringing the bell, clicking that little bell icon, which will let you know when new episodes like this arise. With that said, thank you all again for tuning in. Neither good nor bad. We're just here. Thanks, everybody. Peace.